The first time Mira held a paintbrush, she was 6 years old, sitting on the dusty floor of her family's small apartment in Mumbai. Her father had just lost his job at the textile mill, and her mother worked day and night sewing clothes to keep food on the table. There was no money for toys, no money for school books, but somehow, there was always enough for color. A few cheap watercolors, a scrap of newspaper, and Myra's world came alive. By the time she was 16, Mira had developed a reputation in her neighborhood as the girl who paints emotions. People said she could capture your soul in a single stroke. But talent was never enough when the rent was overdue and her mother's hands ached too much to hold a needle. One rainy afternoon, Mira sat by the window, sketching the wrinkled face of the fruit vendor downstairs. As the storm rolled in, her thoughts turned dark. She wanted to study art, to train properly, but art schools were for people with money, people with time. Not for girls who had to sell their paintings on the roadside just to afford rice. That evening, her mother brought home a visitor, an old friend named Raghav, who ran a small English coaching center. "She needs more than talent," her mother said gently. "She needs language. That's the key to the world outside this city." Mira protested. "I don't need English to paint." "No," Raghav said kindly, "but you need it if you want the world to understand your art." So Mira began attending evening classes. At first, she struggled. English was a language she heard on movies and in fancy stores, not in her home. But slowly, the words began to make sense. Light, shadow, emotion, poverty, hope. She started writing descriptions of her own paintings in English, attaching stories to her work. One day, she uploaded a photo of her painting, an image of a child holding an empty bowl beneath a golden sky, onto an online art forum. She titled it Hunger and Hope, and included a small caption in English. "This is the story of many children. They are waiting, not just for food, but for a future." The post went viral. Emails flooded her inbox. A gallery in London offered to exhibit her work. An NGO requested to use her paintings for their child hunger campaign. A small university offered her a scholarship, an art scholarship. Mira cried when she read the acceptance letter. Not just because she had been chosen, but because it was in English, and she could understand every single word. But success came with its own price. As she prepared to leave for London, her mother fell ill. The old sewing injuries had worsened into something more serious. Mira faced an impossible choice: chase her dreams or stay and care for the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. She chose to stay. Months passed. She turned down the scholarship, but she didn't stop painting. Instead, she taught neighborhood kids for free art in English. She painted during the night and posted her work online. Eventually, her story reached a journalist, who featured her in a national magazine with the headline, "The Girl Who Painted Her Way Out and Turned Back to Light the Path for Others." Donations poured in. A local charity offered to sponsor her mother's treatment. Mira finally boarded a plane to London, but this time, she wasn't going alone. She carried with her dozens of letters from her students, little portraits they had made for her, written in shaky but proud English. Years later, Mira stood in front of a massive canvas in a New York gallery. Her latest piece was titled The Art of Money. It showed a street child drawing coins on the sidewalk with chalk, while behind him, a crowd of people passed by, too busy to notice the masterpiece beneath their feet. In her speech, she said, "Money is not the enemy of art. But the true art of money is learning how to use it, not just to rise, but to lift others too." The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. But somewhere in the back, Mira could see the face of her mother, smiling. And she thought of that little girl on the floor with her paint and paper. She had found her voice, through art and English, and now, she would never stop telling stories. Moral of the story: talent can light the fire, but knowledge fans the flame. And when dreams are shared, they become more than just success, they become change.